It's like the moment of birth, the moment of death. It's the same thing. It's an incredible movement of consciousness into the mystery. It's a window of opportunity. Every death or every birth I'm present at is like a gift from God, as far as I'm concerned.
Welcome to another episode of Ram Dass Here and Now. We are so glad to be together again. This episode is from 1995, so that's 30 years ago. Some of us that might feel like yesterday. For others of us, that was before we were born. But it, in some way, just brings this idea of how time keeps moving. And there's this one thing that we all share, regardless of where we are in the timeline, and that is death. And we typically tiptoe around it. Even in 2025, we tuck it away until it cannot be ignored. But avoiding it, well, Ram Dass is here to remind us that avoiding it is avoiding life itself. The depth, the intensity, the humor, the love, and the sweetness of just being alive right now. So this talk starts with a short meditation. So I invite you to put down your multitasking, your phones, and just enjoy the sweetness of this moment. And then he leads us into this, kind of uncomfortable topic. And he does it with curiosity and compassion and that touch of irreverent humor that we all love. And he reminds us that death is not the end of the story. It's a doorway into consciousness. Before we dive in, just a couple of ways that you might want to support yourself on this journey. And one is just to find more clarity. This drink called Magic Mind, it is plant-powered, has adaptogens and nootropics and green tea and all sorts of lovely things that help keep us focused and clear and energized without the crash. So we're busy managing all of the things in our life, and this will help keep our minds from running in 10,000 different directions. Gives us a little bit of focus and spark. And so check it out. Go to magicmind.com/Ram Dass and use the code Ram Dass for up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase. And then starting today, October 6th, we are offering our fall course. It's 10 days of exploring this topic, conscious aging and death, and how to live more fully. It's called Walking Each Other Home. And each morning you get a bunch of archival talks that have been curated for specific topics. And then each evening we get to join live with contemporary teachers to dive deeper into things like grief, death and psychedelics, community and death, and so much more. So check it out. ramdass.org/mystery. We offer it sliding scale so everyone can join. So if you're able to pay it forward and allow others to join by paying less, that's lovely. So look forward to seeing you there. And with that, take a breath, settle in, and join us as Ram Dass opens a doorway into this great mystery of life and death. And as always, whatever good comes from tuning in and from sharing these teachings, may it ripple out into our lives and be a benefit for all beings everywhere. Namaste and blessings.
Just for a moment, sitting quietly and letting your spacious awareness be present. I'm just going to read you 2 paragraphs from the instructions that we just handed out from Dudjom Rinpoche, so that you can, but play it from inside. Hear these from inside. because this will be practice of how to use this paper. Allow yourself to relax and feel some spaciousness. Letting mind be. To settle naturally. Your body should be still, your speech silent, and breathing as it is, freely flowing. Here, there is a sense of letting go, unfolding, letting be. What does this state of relaxation feel like? You should be like someone after a really hard day's work, exhausted and peacefully satisfied, mind content to rest. Something settles at gut level. And feel it resting in your gut. You begin to experience a lightness. It's as if you're melting. One more paragraph. The mind is so unpredictable. There's no limit to the fantastic and subtle creations which arise. Its moods and where it will lead you. But even amidst a crowd of thoughts, if you even just are aware of the mind, with your body still and silent, letting mind be as it is, then it will naturally and gradually settle of its own accord, ceasing to agitation. Even if your mind is buzzing and playing clever tricks on you, crazy and argumentative in the extreme, if you let it happen with awareness, it will phase itself out, just like the sound of that airplane. Quiet down. And gradually arrive at a resonant stillness. Clear, empty, and at ease. Now, if you even got a taste of one of those sentences and let it in and just felt it for a second, you begin to see how you study a text. You sit down, you quiet your mind, and then read a sentence or two sentences and then sit with it. We're so used to reading novels or something where it's so many pounds of word for one feeling, that to have each thing pregnant with meaning is It's what holy books are about. So now I just wanted to introduce you to that from a certain place in myself so that you could do what you want with these things, but you see how available the kind of writing is. I mean, any guy that's grown up in Tibet and had 200 tutors to teach him everything, and then is now teaching and uses things like, you should be someone after a really hard day's work, mind content to rest. Just the feeling of how available that experience is to everybody. All of us have had a hard day's work sometime in our life. So I find that very accessible. Now, some of the fears that exist in looking at future and fear, the F category, are ones that society is slowly coming to terms with, in which people can begin to talk about them. I mean, you and I, some of us grew up in periods with this statement, you just don't talk about that, was part of the culture we lived in. It was the kind of, not quite, if we don't talk about it, it'll go away. And not quite the magical, if we talk about it, it will cause it. Idea of magical causality. But just, it isn't appropriate social conversation. And look at how that isolated people. Look at that. And it's interesting that Joyce Elders gets fired for advocating masturbation. It's like the still, we don't talk about that. We'll sacrifice a woman like that for that. Isn't that interesting? And that's how deep it is in the culture. We just got condoms out of the closet. Or it's coming out slowly. So, but the society is coming to terms with, it came to terms with birth, so that the father was invited into the process, and midwifery starts to come into the culture and the understanding of creating a sacred space for the whole process of birth, and the whole issue of integrating Eastern and Western medicine. And that's all come out in the whole holistic health movement and all of these movements. These have all spawned in the last 20, 30 years. And similarly with death, it is on its way out. It's not as free as it is in India, where they carry the dead body through the streets in a rickshaw to the burning ghat. But it's certainly come a long way, where it's not all just sort of like a funeral home, where you never see anything happening in life. It's all behind curtains. And the hospice movement and the acknowledgement of what you're buying when you buy intensive care versus what you're buying when you buy hospice versus what you're buying when you stay at home. All of these things are beginning to come out of the closet of the culture, so that people, I mean, the hospice thing has been a major, major new social institution based on the recognition that people die. That's a big thing for society. I mean, that's a collective acknowledgement of mortality. And then to make it comfortable for people, as if it's not some error of nature, you know. And I mean, just that turnaround, because intensive care treats dying as an error of nature, a failure of the system. And the hospice movement says, yeah, it stinks, but you're going to die anyway. So we'll make it as comfortable as possible, because it is natural, like leaves fall off trees. And then the spiritual movement, which is yet to find its way, but we work on it, says, dying, wow, here I come. And it's surrounded by people who want to be with you at that moment and who would like to enjoy it's like the moment of birth, the moment of death. It's the same thing. It's an incredible movement of consciousness into the mystery. It's a window of opportunity. Every death or every birth I'm present at is like a gift from God, as far as I'm concerned. And you get over the oh and oh and oh and oof, you know, and then ah. So, though it's starting to come out of the closet, believe me, even having this discussion is way ahead of where the culture is at this moment. I was just invited to speak at a benefit for an organization started by an eminent person who just died. And I thought in honor of that I should do it. And so they said, well, what would you like to talk about? And I said, well, I'm working on conscious aging at the moment. Oh, I don't think the people of San Francisco would come to a benefit around that. Well, I said I could talk about suffering. No, wasn't interested in that. Well, I could talk about dying. I mean, I've been working for years on conscious dying. Or how about a combination of AIDS and dying? Would that be sexy enough for you? Oh, no, they wouldn't come to anything like that. So even though, I mean, I know that it puts chills into your blood, I think you should examine the chills rather than just assuming you shouldn't think about those things. But there's nothing wrong with thinking about yourself as incapacitated, or yourself as dying, or yourself as dead, or all these kind of visualization exercises. Your funeral, Laura Huxley does a beautiful thing in her book, This Timeless Moment, an exercise for creating your own funeral and being at it. It's the opposite of Woody Allen says, I don't mind dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens. And so I don't mind having a funeral, I just wish I could be there. So here you are, because you create it in your own mind. So she does that. And I think it's interesting to just role play out, feel your way into, so that you decathect these things. You get rid of the fear and you see that it is what it is. I mean, most people say, I'm afraid of pain. But that same person, when they're in pain, it's quite a different thing than the fear of it when you're not in pain. The fear is actually worse. You know, I mean, I'm not knocking how painful pain can be. But I remember when I got hepatitis and the attack came in this, I think I've talked about this, in this little hotel room, way, way up, no cars, no electricity, nowhere to go in the middle of the night when I'm writhing in pain and everybody's asleep and I don't know what's happened to me. And the pain in my liver is excruciating and I'm rolling on the floor under the bed. And at first my mind, Western mind, I'll call, blup, blup, get doctor, get med, yeah. And all of those where nothing was going to happen anyway. I mean, in India, it's got 1 billion people. One more or less is going to make a hell of a lot of difference. I mean, there's the sacred cow. It's a whole other matter. And so once I realized there was nothing I could do about it, then I turned to enjoying it. And it was amazing. I mean, it was excruciating. And I was going, it's excruciating. And I was crying and writhing. And inside there was a giggle going on. It's like obscene. What right have you got to giggle in the presence of pain? Can you hear that? You have every right. It can't be a phony giggle, though, of course. See what I mean about two planes of consciousness? And those moments when it really hurts, and when it really hurts psychologically, is even more fun. Because all of this stuff of how you respond to pain is so obviously the creation of mind. The pain is the pain. It's a strong stimulus acting on a nerve fiber, and that's going to your central nervous system, and you go, ah! How you respond to that has to do with what you have learned to respond to that stimulus. And Stephen Levine has done a lot of nice work, and I'm sure a lot of other people have, on the whole quality of how you embrace pain rather than treat it suddenly as an enemy to push against it. And what happens to the nature of your relationship to pain when you stop dissociating, like that tooth instead of my teeth. It's my teeth, and the minute you get a toothache, it's that tooth. Like, don't talk to me. You're not my tooth. My teeth don't hurt. No tooth of mine would. Huh. I keep looking, hoping the time will move slowly, because it's such fun being with you. Now, the issue of illness, which we'll be talking, physical illness, which we'll be, I'm sure, talk ad nauseum about yet in this course, because it's very real, and I just got accused in a magazine article of avoiding the physical issues of aging. So we're not going to. I've been properly chastised. Trivial though they may be, I'm going to make much of them. I was described as fat in the article. I mean, that really wounded my ego. I love it so when I get wounded. I can't tell you how I delight in the woundedness. And the, oh, I'm wounded. Oh, God, isn't that? It's so funny when you do it to yourself. I mean, that it's not hostile. Or it is, I don't know. I don't know whether I mentioned Debbie Matheson to you. She was Peter Matheson's wife, and she was dying of cancer, and they were a wealthy family, and she was at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. A very nice hospital and nice room. And she was connected to the Zen Center in New York, and the monks started to come there every day, and pretty soon they built a little shrine in one of the corners of the room, and the whole place was lit with candles. And the monks would come in their robes and sit on the floor around the bed and chant and meditate, and they'd be all meditating. And one day when this was happening, the monks all meditating, the doctors making their rounds come in, you know, this is the medicine people of the society, you know. They come in talking with their clipboards, and they come in and they walk into this scene, which is a Zen temple, basically. You know, it's like I must have the wrong floor or something. I must have pushed the wrong button on the elevator. But this has become a shrine, and the doctors go from talking to being quiet to sort of getting a little frustrated that they're not being honored to then either leaving the room or just hanging in, realizing that's what they would love to have. So, but she was still dying of cancer and did die on Christmas Eve. And what I realized was that she had planned through her training, she had planned when I am in the hospital, she had that thought form that why is it a hospital room? Why shouldn't I create the space for what process I'm going through rather than creating a space to deny what I'm going through, basically? And that's what the interesting thing about hospice design can be about all these things. Like in Japan, in some of the sects, when you're dying, they put a screen at the foot of your bed which shows the Pure Land. And it says, sort of focus on where you're going, not where you've been, right? And the predicament about dying is that when you focus on what's happening, it's all happening so fast and so dramatically, so intensely as systems are closing down and all this stuff is happening, that it's very hard to keep your consciousness saying. I don't know whether I gave that example of, in the Tibetan tradition, they talk about the leaving of the five energies, and they talk about when the fire leaves the body, the person psychologically feels cold. And when the water leaves the body, the water element leaves the body, people feel thirsty. And when the earth element leaves, they feel very heavy or inert. And when the air element leaves, their out-breath becomes longer than their in-breath. And then there's the etheric element and so on. Now, you think about the people, and I've done this to you in this class before, but I'll just say it again because it's more relevant. Think about people when you're about a dying bed and somebody says, I'm thirsty. How different if you grew up in a culture where somebody said, the water element is leaving. Isn't that quite a different definition of that moment? Doesn't one definition, I mean, it's the same thirst, but one of them says, I'm thirsty, and the other says, there's thirst. Doesn't matter, it doesn't mean you don't give them a glass of water, by the way. Has nothing to do with that. It's just that's not all you're doing. So what I'm suggesting by Debbie's example and all this is that to practice and rehearse the things that have juice for you about the future, so that you're not living this moment in fear of the future. Because the future is basically a mystery. You don't know what the future is. Or maybe you do, and if so, you're already sitting here in the soul and you're cool. But most of us are living in linear time. Our minds are in linear time, so we think we don't know the future. Then the question is, how do you deal with a mystery? Do you love a mystery? Do you hate a mystery? You need control, you hate a mystery. Because mysteries, by their definition, you don't have control over. And I would say that it's most of the wisdom traditions suggest that you remain a student of the mystery. The stance is, I'm open to what it is. Not, ugh, and not grabbing. And that's the way ultimately you and I want to deal with our fears. Fears of the future. I mean, I'm not choosing to be incapacitated by chronic illness. But if it comes, it will be a new existential moment, and I will bring to it the same resources of consciousness I'm bringing to the whole introduction to aging that I'm going through now. What else would I do? So why should I assume that later on I'm going to be less conscious than I am now? I just like sharing at the end of this a few quotes from interesting people. Whitman, Walt Whitman. Do you see, O my brothers and sisters, it is not chaos and death, it is form and union and plan. It is eternal life. It is happiness. It's Walt Whitman. One Zen monk is dying and they say, Roshi, Roshi, give us your words of wisdom. And he says, my, but this cake is delicious, and he dies. Carl Jung, after his heart attack in 1944. What happens after death is so unspeakably glorious that our imaginations and our feelings do not suffice to form even an approximate conception of it. It's a nice one. Goethe. I am just as certain as you see me here that I have existed 1,000 times before, and I hope to return 1,000 times more. Sort of a limited consciousness, but it's nice. Voltaire. After all, it is no more surprising to me to be born twice than it is to be born once. That's a sweet one, isn't it? Rabbi Schneerson, the head of the Hasids in Brooklyn. Of course we believe in reincarnation, but only a fool would wait to be reincarnated. I like that. That's just a wonderful Jewish, such a Jewish use of reincarnation to create more guilt. Whoops. Rilke, one of my favorite poets. Rilke really is out there, by the way. If you want more manual than the three things, try Rilke. Oh, boy. He says, love and death are gifts given to us that mostly are passed on unopened. Opening to death. That's what Castaneda talks about, keeping it on your left shoulder. Making a friend of death instead of some dreaded dark hole. Don't see the mystery in negative terms. That's judgment. And that's rooted in fear of loss of control. And fear of loss of control is the thing the ego feels because it's a thing in relation to everything. The soul understands it's part of everything, and the soul doesn't have that fear of transformation or change. Just a couple more. Johnson. Then with no fiery, throbbing pain, no cold gradation of decay, death broke at once the vital chain and freed his soul the nearest way. And when you begin to think of death as the separation of the soul from the body, you begin to see death as the separation, what they call in India, the dropping of the body. Plato, and every one of these you could work with deeply. Death is nothing more than a migration of the soul from this place to another. It's pretty good. Emerson and Thoreau, they certainly knew all this stuff. And one of the interesting researches that you will want to do is to read the near-death literature. The Life After Life, Raymond Moody, and some of the other books that have come about just the experiences of people who have been determined to be clinically dead and then came back to life, were resuscitated or something, and what they report in their protocols as what happened to them. And when you read hundreds of these, you begin to see patterns that are so profound, and you say either these are archetypes that are in the cells, or these people went on a similar trip. And I drew out of some of the NDE literature some of the qualities that happened to people during the experience to give you a feeling for that. Is this all right? Is this too much for you? I could stop for questions, but I'd like to finish this little unit if I could. Near-death experience people don't lose the fear of dying, only the fear of death. That's an interesting distinction, the fear of dying versus the fear of death. Yeah. So they lost the fear of death, but not the fear of dying. The elements of it were that they felt they were out of their body, accurate visual perception, audible sounds of voices, a feeling of peace and painlessness, felt life review occur instantaneously, not in time, but all present. Their whole incarnation is just there before their eyes. My life flashed before my eyes, that one. Being in another world, encountering other beings, some kind of a tunnel experience, many of them reported, and some kind of precognition, understanding things about the future. So, then you look in the, this is just a fun association, St. Paul in 2 Corinthians 12 said, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up into the third heaven. Whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And I know that this man was caught up into paradise. Whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And he heard things that cannot be told, which man may not utter. Can you see going into planes of consciousness which are not conceptual? Where there aren't words, there isn't all these structures, but they exist like this exists. And then you come back and somebody says, well, what was it like? What are you going to do? They can only be it. They can't ever, they can't hear it from there. It's got to come from, you understand? Charlie Tart, who's a really very hip psychologist, said, our consciousness after death is different because we now gain a sense of who we are through input of our senses. But once we don't have those senses, so some consciousness after death is going to still exist, but it's going to be radically different from the ordinary state of waking consciousness, because your consciousness is based on certain structures you have in place here. And when those are all taken away, you're still aware, but you're thinking in a whole other level. And if you haven't practiced that, which is what we talked about, practicing intuitive awareness, practicing not denying your rationality and its beauty, but just recultivating the non-linear, non-rational, non-purposive kind of understanding that's in your being. This is Yeats. An aged man is but a paltry thing, tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing for every tatter in its mortal dress. O sages standing in God's holy fire, be the singing masters of my soul. Consume my heart away, sick with desire and fastened to a dying animal. It knows not what it is, and gather me into the artifice of eternity. That's a nice one. Yum, 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 yum. And that's soul talk. That's very simply soul talk. And then I just want to end with this one, which is D.H. Lawrence. Then I'm stopping. Because I want to leave you with the understanding that what we're doing is we're realigning our perspective to our lives. We're not pushing away our lives or denying them. In fact, we learn how to be at home in our lives without losing the soul. So we have this kind of consciousness, and we are also at home in the world of ego. But yet we never forget that we are part of the one, or part of that which is. It's all the religions say, just remember. That's all you got to do is remember. Just remember. D.H. Lawrence, all that matters is to be one with the living God, to be a creature in the house of the God of life, like a cat asleep in a chair, at peace, in peace, and at home with the master of the house, with the mistress, at home in the house of the living, sleeping on the hearth, yawning before the fire, sleeping on the hearth of the living world, yawning at home before the fire of life, feeling the presence of the living God like a great reassurance, a deep calm in the heart, a presence as of the master sitting at the board in his own house and greater being in the house of life.
This podcast is brought to you by the Love Serve Remember Foundation and ramdas.org. We appreciate you listening, and we appreciate all the support that you've given us. Please continue that support and donate at ramdas.org. We can then continue to share what Ram Dass has been sharing for all of these years. Thank you.